My uncle came by chance. He had not planned the visit. He climbed the stairs, found my condition, sent for his own personal physician. My uncle is a wealthy man, and he left monies for medicines, better food than I could afford, warmer blankets. There were times when I thought I was going to die. There were times when I confess I hoped I was going to die. But God restored me. And 6 weeks later, when I was supposed to be dead, I walked back into medical school. It was then when I began to understand this scripture that tells us, he who began a good work, and you will perform it until the day of Jesus Christ. The day came for me to leave for China. My mother came to see me off. We sat in a tiny cabin, 5 feet by 7. That was going to be my home for those 6 months it took to sail from England to China in those days. We sang and we prayed and we wept. The ship set sail, and we'd not gotten out of the Irish Sea when a storm came, threatened to sink the ship, but God brought us through the storm. When we reached the equator, we fell into the doldrums. They're an area where there is no wind, and when you're on a sailing vessel, that is not a good thing. You can't paddle all the way to China. The captain was a believer, a Christian. He called me into his cabin. Dr. Taylor, he said, we must pray that God will send the wind. Our provisions are running very, very low. Our fresh water is nearly gone. And so I rushed out on the deck of the ship. I said to the first mate, a very ungodly, very profane man, lower the sails, the wind is coming. And he laughed in my face until he felt the breath of God in his. God brought the wind, and it did not fail us all the way to China. When I arrived in China, I found a land in turmoil. A land in which a civil war had been going on for some 10 years prior to my arrival. A land in which we estimate 1 million souls died every month without Jesus Christ. I arrived with all of the zeal and none of the knowledge of a very young missionary. I did not speak Chinese. I had some letters of introduction, but the people that I had letters to had left. Finally, an older missionary took pity upon me. He helped me find someone to teach me Chinese, find me a place to stay. We began to minister the Chinese as best we could. In those days, with the Civil War going on, all of the Europeans, the merchants, the missionaries, the Dutch, the French, the Germans, the English, they were all kept in a walled-off part of the city. And if you wanted to share the gospel with people outside of the wall, you had to get special permission. And so the only people around us were the Chinese people inside the wall, and we had shared the gospel so many times with them, they knew it far better than we. They called us Hikwatsi, black devils. We wore long black clerical robes nearly to the ground. In those days, I had more red in my beard. Now it is gray. But the Chinese people believed that people with red hair are possessed of the devil. Perhaps you know someone that would lead you to agree with their position. I'm not certain, but can you imagine? Here I am, dressed in black, for them an evil color, red in my beard, possessed of the devil, trying to tell them about Jesus Christ. They did not understand, and I did not understand why they did not understand. They would take our booklets and our pamphlets, and we felt so gloriously wonderful because we had given them the gospel. But I remember once I had given out all of my pamphlets, and I was feeling so wonderful about giving out the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I went around the corner, and there was a man I had just given a handful of pamphlets to, trading them just for the paper so that he could get money to buy rice wine. I realized that I had not come to China to tell them about Jesus Christ. I had not come to convert them to Christianity. I'd come to convert them to Englishmen. After all, that's what Christians look like. They look like Englishmen, is it not? Whatever country you might represent, we all think that Christians look exactly like ourselves. I had come into a country far older than my own, a country with its own art, its own musical scale, its own culture. And I was trying to make them into me, not into Jesus Christ. How foolish. It is no wonder that our efforts were powerless. And so then I laid aside my English clothing. And when I am on the field, I dress as you see me now. I shaved my head. I grew a queue, a long braid. The Chinese people believed that their gods would steal boy children away, and so when their boys were born, they would shave their heads, grow a queue to fool their gods. And you say, well, what a silly thing. We are no different. We try to fool God all the time. We try to fool God by the way we dress, the words we speak, even sometimes carrying a Bible. The difference is that God, our God, is real, and He knows the thoughts and the intents of our heart. He cannot be fooled. We are not so very different, are we? I shaved my beard in the Mandarin shape. I shaved my eyebrows to give my eyes the beautiful almond shape of the Oriental eye. I tried to dye my skin, but I was not very successful. I nearly killed myself with that experiment. I would not recommend it. I became Chinese. I moved out of the European compound. I lived with the Chinese people. I ate what they ate. I lived among them. I became Chinese for them. God began to do a great work. We began to see many, many people come to Jesus Christ. It was not without some difficulty. I remember one young man, he had been a former priest of Buddha, and he came to me and he said, Dr. Taylor, how long have you known about Jesus Christ? I said, all my life. I grew up hearing about Jesus Christ. Dr. Taylor, how long has your nation, England, how long have they known about Jesus Christ? Hundreds of years. Dr. Taylor, do you hate us? No, I do not hate you. I love you. Dr. Taylor, does your country, do they hate us? These English people, do they hate us? No, we do not hate you. If you do not hate us, why did you not come sooner to tell us about Jesus Christ? Do you wish all of the Chinese people to die and to go to hell because you do not care about us? What was I going to tell them? It wasn't hate. It was apathy. We didn't care whether people lived or died, whether they went to heaven or hell. I remember once we were going up the river in a mailboat. It was very much like a large canoe, about this wide. You had to sit very still. And a fisherman in another boat fell out, and he was entangled in the nets. He went down very quickly. And I called to some of the fishermen, save his life, save his life. And they said, Biben, it is not convenient. I said, I will pay you. How much? And we argued over how much I would pay them. And finally, they got him out in no time at all. But by then, it was too